Marcus Chen sat in the back row of the advanced tactical theory classroom, trying to make himself as small as possible. This was harder than it sounded when you were one of only 3 humans in the entire Galactic Naval Academy. Every day. For the past 6 months, he had walked these halls feeling like a zoo animal on display. The classroom buzzed with quiet conversations in dozens of alien languages. Marcus understood most of them thanks to his translation implant, but he wished he didn't. The words were always the same. Deathworlder, savage, primitive, monster. The Centauri Academy was beautiful, with its crystal walls and floating platforms that adjusted to each species' preferred environment. The artificial gravity could be tuned for comfort. The atmosphere was perfectly balanced, and the temperature never varied by more than a degree. It was paradise compared to Earth. That was exactly the problem. "Settle down, cadets, instructor." HFY called out, his 4 arms gesturing for attention. The Nexari instructor was considered one of the best tactical minds in the galaxy. His species had never known war, never faced extinction, never had to fight for survival. They solved problems with logic and mathematics. Marcus pulled out his datapad and tried to look interested as HFY began the lesson. Today's topic was historical ambush scenarios. The instructor projected a 3-dimensional battlefield in the center of the room. The Battle of Kepler Station demonstrates the importance of environmental awareness, HFY explained. The Federation forces failed to account for the asteroid field's gravitational effects. Around the room, cadets took notes. Most of them came from advanced civilizations that had solved war through diplomacy or technology. Fighting was something their ancestors had done thousands of years ago. For them, military tactics were academic exercises. For Marcus, they were Tuesday afternoon on Earth. He noticed movement in his peripheral vision. 4 cadets were shifting in their seats, glancing at him and then at each other. Marcus recognized them. 2 were Korthax named Thresh and Gorak, built like walking tanks with natural armor plating. The other 2 were Zephyrians called Sisk and Velm, tall and thin with joints that bent in impossible directions. All 4 species were known for their military traditions. Unlike most of the galaxy's peaceful races, these 4 came from worlds where strength mattered. They had been giving Marcus strange looks for weeks. "The key to successful ambush tactics," HFY continued, "is patience and coordination. Multiple attackers must work together to overwhelm their target before defensive measures can be deployed." Thresh leaned over to whisper something to Gorak. Both Korthax grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. Across the room, the Zephyrians exchanged glances. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He had been trying so hard to fit in. When other cadets complained about the Academy's physical training, Marcus agreed it was difficult, even though the exercises barely raised his heart rate. When they struggled with the combat simulations, he held back his natural reactions, moving slower and clumsier than his body wanted to. On Earth, pretending to be weak could get you killed. Here, being strong would make him a monster. "Now then," HFY announced, "we will conduct a practical exercise. Please divide into groups of 8 for a tactical simulation." The classroom lights dimmed as the holographic battlefield expanded. Students began moving around, forming groups. Marcus stayed in his seat, waiting to see who would be stuck with the human. "Chen!" Thresh called out, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "You can join our group!" Marcus looked up, surprised. The 4 military species cadets were standing together, along with 3 other students. It was unusual for them to invite him anywhere. "Thanks," Marcus said, gathering his things. Maybe they were finally warming up to him. The simulation arena materialized around them. It was a damaged space station with flickering lights and floating debris. Their mission was to secure 3 control points while defending against automated defenses. "Standard formation," Gorak announced, taking charge. Korthax take point, Zephyrians provide reconnaissance, others support. Marcus nodded and moved to the position they indicated. It was isolated from the rest of the group, near a dark corridor. He didn't like it tactically, but he didn't want to cause problems. The simulation began. Their group moved through the station, clearing rooms, and advancing toward the objectives. Marcus stayed in his assigned position, watching the rear approach and calling out movement reports. That was when he noticed the pattern. Thresh and Gorak were moving to flank him. Not the enemy targets, but him. Sisk had disappeared using Zephyrian stealth abilities, and Velm was positioning himself to block the nearest exit. The other 3 cadets in their group were being subtly directed away from Marcus's position. His blood ran cold as understanding. Hit him. This wasn't a training exercise for them, it was a test. They wanted to see what the dangerous human would do when cornered. Marcus forced himself to stay calm. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe he was being paranoid. These were his classmates, not enemies. They wouldn't actually attack him, but his instincts were screaming warnings that had kept his species alive for millions of years. Every muscle in his body was tensing, preparing for violence. His breathing slowed and deepened. His vision sharpened, picking out every shadow and movement. The other cadets in the class were focused on their own simulations, not paying attention to what was happening in the dark corner where Marcus waited. Instructor Vexhai was monitoring multiple groups, his attention divided. Thresh and Gorak were almost in position now. Their natural armor would protect them from most attacks. Korthak bones were dense as stone, their hide thick as leather. They probably thought a soft human couldn't hurt them. Marcus had spent his childhood dodging Earth's predators. Bears, big cats, venomous snakes, and worse. He had learned that survival wasn't about being the strongest or fastest. It was about being smarter, more adaptable, and more willing to do whatever it took to win. "Human," Thresh whispered, his voice barely audible over the simulation's sound. "Effects. Let's see what you're really made of." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the familiar calm that came before violence. When he opened them again, something had changed. The mask he had worn for 6 months was slipping away. He was no longer trying to be a peaceful academy cadet. He was what his species had always been under their thin veneer of civilization. He was a predator. "Whenever you're ready," Marcus said quietly. The Korthaks exchanged glances. They had expected fear, maybe pleading. Instead, the human was looking at them with the cold calculation of something that had never learned to be prey. Around them, the simulation continued. Other groups completed their objectives and celebrated their victories. Instructor Vexhai made notes on his data pad. The classroom felt normal and safe. Marcus counted heartbeats. He mapped escape routes. He identified weapons and weaknesses. His mind ran through a dozen scenarios, calculating odds and outcomes. The attack would come soon. He could see it in their body language, hear it in their breathing. 4 against 1, in a dark corner where no one would see what happened. They thought they knew what humans were capable of. They thought 6 months of careful observation had taught them everything they needed to know about their species. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The simulation around them flickered and shifted, providing perfect cover for what was about to happen. In the distance, other cadets laughed and called out to each other. Marcus waited, every sense alert, every muscle ready. The lesson was about to begin. The attack came without warning, just as Marcus had expected. Thresh moved first, lunging forward with the confidence of a predator that had never met anything more dangerous than itself. His armored fist swung toward Marcus's head, intended to knock the human unconscious before he could react. Marcus wasn't there anymore. 6 months of pretending to be slow and clumsy had been the hardest acting job of his life. Now, as his body moved with the fluid grace that had kept his ancestors alive on the deadliest planet in the galaxy, Marcus felt like he was breathing freely for the first time since arriving at the academy. He ducked under Thresh's swing, the Korthak's fist whistling through empty air. Before the alien could recover, Marcus was inside his guard, driving an elbow upward into the soft joint where Thresh's arm met his torso. The impact sent shockwaves through the Korthak's nervous system. Thresh stumbled backward, his arm going numb. His species' natural armor was impressive, but Marcus had spent months studying his classmates' anatomy. Every species had weak points. You just had to know where to look. Gorak roared in anger and charged from the left, his heavy footsteps shaking the floor. Korthaks were strong and tough, but they were also slow. On their homeworld, that didn't matter. They could outlast any threat through sheer endurance. Marcus had been raised by a species that hunted mammoth-sized creatures by running them to death. Endurance was humanity's specialty. He sidestepped Gorak's charge, grabbing the Korthak's extended arm and using the alien's own momentum against him. Marcus planted his feet and pivoted, redirecting Gorak's forward motion into a devastating throw that sent the 200-pound alien crashing into the simulation's wall. The holographic environment flickered around them, damaged by the impact. Somewhere in the distance, Instructor Vexhi's voice called out, asking if there was a technical malfunction. That was when Sisk struck from behind. Zephyrians were the galaxy's premier stealth specialists. Their natural camouflage and silent movement made them nearly invisible when they chose to be. Sisk had been moving into position for the past minute, confident that the human was too distracted by the Korthaks to notice his approach. Marcus spun around as Sisk's clawed hand reached for his throat. The Zephyrian's yellow eyes widened in shock as he realized the human had been tracking his movement the entire time. "Humans are persistence hunters," Marcus said quietly, catching Sisk's wrist and twisting. "Do you know what that means?" Sisk tried to pull away, but Marcus's grip was like iron. The human continued speaking in the same calm tone he might use to discuss the weather. "It means we don't just track our prey. We understand them. We predict them. We know where they're going before they do." Marcus twisted Sisk's arm further, applying pressure to nerve clusters that no Zephyrian anatomy text listed. Sisk's legs gave out, and he collapsed to the floor, his arm temporarily paralyzed. That left Velm. The fourth Zephyrian had been guarding the exit, but now he was backing away, his confidence evaporating. Unlike his companions, Velm was smart enough to recognize when a plan had gone completely wrong. "This was supposed to be a test," Velm said, his voice high with panic. "Just hazing. We weren't going to really hurt you." Marcus turned to face him, and Velm took another step backward. There was something in the human's eyes that made the Zephyrian's survival instincts. "Scream warnings." "I know," Marcus said. "You thought you were playing with a pet, something safe and harmless that you could push around to see what would happen." Behind him, Thresh was trying to get back to his feet, shaking his head to clear the ringing in, his ears. Gorak was slumped against the wall, dazed. Sisk lay motionless on the floor, conscious but unable to move. "The thing about humans," Marcus continued, walking slowly toward Velm, "is that we're very good at pretending to be something we're not. We had to be, to survive on Earth." Velm's camouflage flickered as his emotional state disrupted his natural abilities. He was trapped between Marcus and the wall, with nowhere to run. "My species learned to hunt in packs," Marcus said. "We learned to use tools. We learned to think ahead and plan. But most importantly, we learned that sometimes the best way to catch prey is to let it think it's the predator." Velm made a desperate lunge for the exit, moving with all the speed his species was famous for. For a moment, it looked like he might make it. Then Marcus was there, moving faster than any human had a right to move in the Academy's gentle gravity. His hand closed around Velm's ankle, and the Zephyrian went down hard. 15 seconds, Marcus said, checking the time display on his data pad. That's how long this took. Around them, the simulation was shutting down, damaged beyond repair. The lights came up, revealing the aftermath of what had been intended as a simple ambush. Thresh was sitting on the floor, holding his injured arm. Gorak was still leaning against the wall, trying to remember how to breathe. Sisk was curled up on his side, feeling slowly returning to his limbs. Velm wasn't moving at all, unconscious from the impact with the floor. Marcus stood in the center of it all, not even breathing hard. The other cadets in the class had stopped, their simulations to stare. 43 sets of alien eyes were fixed on the quiet human who had just dismantled 4 of their strongest classmates without breaking a sweat. Instructor Vex High approached slowly, his 4 arms spread in a gesture of non-aggression. His species had sophisticated threat assessment abilities, and every one of them was telling him that the human in front of him was extremely dangerous. "Cadet Chen," Vex High said carefully. "What happened here?" Marcus looked around at his classmates' faces. Fear, shock, awe, and something else. Recognition. For the first time since arriving at the academy, they were seeing him clearly. "Training." "Accident, sir," Marcus said, his voice returning to its usual quiet tone. "I think some of the simulation parameters got mixed up." Vex High's compound eyes studied the scene. The damage patterns, the positioning of the injured cadets, the fact that Marcus didn't have a scratch on him. The instructor was many things, but he wasn't stupid. "I see," Vex High said finally. "Medical team to classroom 7, we have 4. Cadets requiring attention." As the medics rushed in, Marcus gathered his datapad and prepared to leave. The class period was over and he had other courses to attend. But he could feel the weight of 43 sets of eyes following him as he walked toward the door. The whispers had already started, spreading through the class like wildfire. For 6 months, Marcus had tried to hide what humans really were. Now, in 15 seconds, all of that careful deception had been stripped away. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth was classified as a death world. The security recording played for the 5th time in Admiral Kreeth's office. Each viewing revealed new details that made the Academy's senior staff more uncomfortable. Frame 1. 4 cadets surrounding Marcus Chen in what appeared to be a coordinated ambush. The positioning was too perfect to be accidental. Frame 15. The same 4 cadets down and neutralized. Marcus standing calmly in the center, checking his datapad like he was reading the morning news. "Pause it there," Admiral Kreeth commanded. Her scaled hide rippled with colors that indicated deep concern. As Commandant of the Galactic Naval Academy, she had seen combat footage from dozens of species. This was different. "Computer, analyze." The humans' movement patterns during the engagement. The Academy's advanced AI highlighted Marcus's actions in slow motion. What had looked like simple defensive moves in real time revealed layers of tactical sophistication that most military analysts would miss. "The subject demonstrates advanced spatial awareness," the computer reported. "Movement efficiency is 97%. No wasted motion detected. Threat assessment and response time indicates combat experience far beyond Academy training." Dr. Yenai, the Academy's chief medical officer, studied the biological readouts from Marcus's uniform sensors. His heart rate never exceeded 70 beats per minute. Stress hormones remained at baseline levels. Physiologically, he wasn't even excited. "What about the injured cadets?" Admiral Kreeth asked. "All 4 will recover completely," Dr. Yenai replied. "But the injuries are precise. The human targeted specific nerve clusters and joint vulnerabilities with surgical accuracy. This wasn't random violence. It was applied anatomy." Commander Thex pulled up Marcus's Academy records. "Look at this. For 6 months, his combat simulation scores have been average. Good enough to pass, but nothing exceptional. Either he's been deliberately underperforming or human combat capabilities are vastly underestimated in our databases," Admiral Kreeth finished. "Computer, display human species classification." The holographic display showed Earth's official designation, Death World Class 7th, Gravity, 1.0 G, Atmospheric Composition Standard, Dominant Species, Human. Classification, Primitive Aggressive, Threat Level, Moderate. Primitive aggressive, Commander Thex read aloud. Threat level moderate. They watched the recording again. Marcus, moving like liquid lightning, dismantling 4 trained fighters with casual efficiency. I'm beginning to think our classification system needs updating, Admiral Creeth said dryly. Meanwhile, in the Academy's medical bay, the 4 attackers were coming to terms with what had happened to them. Thresh flexed his arm carefully, testing the mobility that Dr. Yenai had restored. He hit me once. Just once. How did that shut down my entire nervous system? Humans study anatomy, Sisk said from the next bed. His voice was still shaky. But not like we do. They don't memorize bone structures and muscle groups. They learn where to hurt things. Gorak was staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment when Marcus had thrown him. I outweigh him by 50 pounds. My species' bone density is 3 times. Higher than baseline humanoid. He threw me like I was a child. It wasn't strength, Velm said quietly. It was leverage and timing, and the fact that he knew exactly how our bodies would move before we did. The medical bay's doors slid open, and Marcus walked in. All 4 aliens tensed, their fight-or-flight responses triggering despite the peaceful environment. Relax, Marcus said, raising his hands in a non-threatening gesture. I came to check on you. Make sure you're okay. Okay? Thresh laughed, but there was no humor in it. You destroyed us in 15 seconds without breaking a sweat. Marcus pulled up a chair and sat down. In the medical bay's bright lights, he looked exactly like what he had appeared to be for 6 months. Young, average height for a human, with soft features and kind eyes. It was impossible to reconcile this appearance with what they had witnessed. I didn't want to hurt you, Marcus said. Any of you. But you put me in a position where I had to choose between defending myself and letting you beat me unconscious. We weren't going to... Gorak started. Yes, you were, Marcus interrupted. I could see it in your body language, hear it in your breathing patterns, smell the adrenaline on you. My species evolved to read those signs. It's how we survived. Sisk leaned forward, wincing slightly. Survived what? Your homeworld is classified as moderately dangerous. Higher gravity and more aggressive wildlife than average, but nothing extreme. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millions of years of evolutionary pressure. Earth has had 5 mass extinction events. Each time, 90% of all life died. Each time, something survived and adapted and became stronger. For the past 2 million years, that something has been human. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Centauri Prime's peaceful landscape. 3 suns hung in the sky, their combined light warming gardens that had never known winter. Your species developed intelligence to solve problems, Marcus continued. Mine developed intelligence to kill things that were trying to kill us. Every predator, every disease, every natural disaster, every other species that competed with us for resources. We had to become the most dangerous thing on our planet just to survive. But you're so... Velm struggled for words. You seem so peaceful, harmless. That's camouflage, Marcus said simply. The most successful predators don't look dangerous until it's too late. Humans learn to cooperate, to build societies, to hide their violent nature behind civilization and culture. But underneath, we're still what we always were. Dr. Yenai appeared in the doorway, her sensors detecting elevated stress levels from the patients. Cadet Chen, I think that's enough visiting for today. Marcus nodded and started toward the door. He paused at the threshold and looked back at the 4 cadets who had tried to test him. For what it's worth, he said, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I've been trying very hard to fit in here. To be the kind of student you could feel safe around. Why? Thresh asked. Why hide what you are? Marcus smiled, but there was sadness in it. because once people know what humans are really capable of, they never look at us the same way again. We become weapons instead of people, monsters instead of friends." He left without another word, leaving the 4 cadets to contemplate the implications of what they had learned. Later that evening, in the Academy's communications center, Priority 1 messages were being transmitted to governments across the galaxy. The content was classified at the highest levels, but the basic message was simple. Human threat assessment required immediate revision. The species that had seemed so harmless, so eager to join galactic civilization, possessed capabilities that their initial contact protocols had completely missed. In 15 seconds of recorded combat, Marcus Chen had demonstrated tactical awareness, combat efficiency, and anatomical knowledge that suggested humans were far more dangerous than anyone had realized. The galaxy was going to have to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about Earth's children. But for now, Marcus Chen was just a cadet trying to study for his next exam, pretending that his life hadn't just changed forever. The disciplinary hearing was scheduled for 0800 hours, 3 days after the incident. Marcus sat outside Admiral Creeth's office, watching other cadets hurry past without making eye contact. Word had spread through the Academy faster than quantum. Communications. The human was dangerous. Marcus had lived through this before, back on Earth. In elementary school, when he had reflexively disabled a bully who tried to corner him. In high school, when a gang had decided to test the quiet kid's reputation. Each time the pattern was the same: fear, isolation, and the slow realization that people would never see him as just another person again. "Cadet Chen," Admiral Creeth's aide gestured toward the office. "The Admiral will see you now." The office was designed to be intimidating, with its soaring ceiling and walls covered in battle honors from across the galaxy. Admiral Creeth sat behind a desk that could have doubled as a landing pad, her expression unreadable. "Be seated, Cadet." Marcus took the indicated chair, keeping his posture relaxed and non-threatening. 6 months of behavioral modification classes had taught him how to appear harmless to alien psychology. "I've reviewed the security footage," Admiral Creeth began, "multiple times. I've also consulted with combat analysts, xenobiologists, and military historians." She activated a holographic display showing the engagement from multiple angles. Marcus watched himself move through the fight, seeing details he hadn't noticed in real time. "The consensus is unanimous," the Admiral continued. "What you demonstrated was not the random violence of an untrained individual. It was the controlled application of combat expertise by someone with extensive military experience." "I don't have military experience, Admiral," Marcus said truthfully. "No formal training, perhaps, but your movement patterns, target selection, and tactical awareness suggest otherwise." She paused the recording at the moment Marcus disabled Sisk. "You knew exactly where to strike to cause temporary paralysis without permanent damage. That knowledge isn't accidental." Marcus chose his words carefully. On Earth, basic anatomy is taught in secondary education. Understanding how bodies work is considered fundamental knowledge. For what purpose? Survival. The word hung in the air between them. "Admiral, with respect, I think there may be some misunderstanding about what Earth is like." Admiral Creeth leaned back in her chair. "Enlighten me, Cadet." Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Academy's perfect grounds. Manicured gardens stretched to the horizon, with climate-controlled environments for dozens of species' comfort. "Your classification lists Earth as Deathworld Class 7. Do you know what that means in practical terms?" "Higher gravity, more dangerous wildlife, occasional natural disasters." "Admiral, on Earth, we have storms that can level cities, earthquakes that split continents, volcanoes that block out the sun for years. We have predators that hunt in packs, parasites that rewire their hosts' brains, and diseases that jump between species without warning. He turned back to face her. Every human alive today is descended from survivors, not just of one catastrophe, but of thousands, millions. Our entire evolutionary history is a sequence of existential threats that killed off the weak, the slow, and the unprepared. Admiral Creeth's color patterns shifted to indicate deep thought. You're saying that combat capability is a survival trait for your species? It's more than that, Marcus said. Humans don't just fight when cornered. We hunt. We track. We plan. We coordinate. We use tools and tactics in psychological warfare. For 2 million years, being better at violence than everything else on our planet was the only way to stay alive. The Admiral activated another display, showing Marcus's academy records. Yet for 6 months, you've hidden these capabilities. Your simulation scores are average. Your physical training results are unremarkable. You've been deliberately underperforming. Yes, ma'am. Why? Marcus sat back down, his expression tired. Because I've seen what happens when people know what humans can do. They stop seeing us as individuals and start seeing us as weapons. Friends become suspicious. Colleagues become afraid. Children learn to avoid us. The 4 cadets who attacked you aren't bad people, Marcus interrupted. They were curious about the stories. They wanted to see if the rumors about Deathworlders were true. In their cultures, testing someone's strength is a form of respect. But they misjudged the stakes, Admiral Creeth observed. Completely. They thought they were wrestling with a pet bear. They didn't realize they were poking a sleeping predator. The Admiral studied the psychological profile on her screen. Earth's initial contact team had classified humans as primitive, aggressive, based on their history of warfare and territorial behavior. But the footage from the classroom suggested something far more sophisticated. Cadet Chen, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need an honest answer. Are you a danger to the other students? Marcus met her gaze steadily. Every human is a danger to everything around them, Admiral. It's not a choice. It's biology. The question is whether we choose to control that capability or let it control us. And your choice? I came here to learn, to prove that humans can be more than just survivors, that we can be explorers, diplomats, scientists, friends. He gestured toward the security footage. But if someone forces me to choose between their safety and mine, I'll choose mine, every time, without hesitation. The honesty was brutal and complete. Admiral Creeth had commanded multi-species fleets for decades, and she recognized the voice of someone who had made peace with their own nature. The 4 cadets you injured have been questioned extensively. Their stories corroborate your version of events. This was clearly self-defense against a coordinated assault. Marcus felt some tension leave his shoulders. However, the Admiral continued, this incident has raised serious questions about human integration into galactic society. Our threat assessment protocols were clearly inadequate. She stood and moved to a wall display showing the locations of Earth's colonies and outposts. There are currently 47,000 humans serving in various capacities throughout the Federation. If they all possess capabilities similar to yours, they do, Marcus confirmed. Some better, some worse. But every human has the basic package. We can't turn it off. Then we have a problem. The Federation Council is demanding a complete review of human participation in all programs. Some are calling for immediate restrictions. Marcus had expected this. It was the same pattern that played out whenever humans encountered alien civilizations. Initial contact, cultural exchange, growing suspicion, and eventual segregation. What's going to happen to me? He asked. Admiral Creeth turned back to him, her expression grave. That depends on you, Cadet. The easy solution would be to classify humans as a potential threat and limit their access to sensitive positions. The harder solution would be to acknowledge that we misunderstood your species and adapt our protocols accordingly. Which do you prefer? I prefer solutions that work. the Admiral said bluntly. And isolating a species with your capabilities would be strategically foolish. Better to understand them, train them, and find ways to channel their abilities constructively. She returned to her desk and pulled up a new file. I'm transferring you to the Advanced Combat Program effective immediately. Your new curriculum will focus on tactical leadership, alien psychology, and cross-species military cooperation. Marcus blinked in surprise. Admiral? The galaxy needs to understand what humans are capable of, Cadet Chen. And humans need to understand how to work with species who didn't evolve in constant mortal terror. She smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Consider it a cultural exchange program. As Marcus left the Admiral's office, he realized that his life at the Academy wasn't ending. It was beginning. For the first time since arriving, he wouldn't have to pretend to be something he wasn't. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for what humans really were. 3 months later, Marcus stood at the front of Advanced Combat Simulation Lab 3, facing a class of 27 cadets from 18 different species. The room was larger than his previous classroom, with specialized equipment for species, with unique physical requirements. Today we're studying asymmetric warfare, Marcus announced, activating the holographic display. Specifically how smaller forces can defeat larger ones through superior tactics and understanding of enemy psychology. The faces looking back at him were a mix of respect, curiosity, and carefully controlled fear. Word about the 15-second incident had spread throughout the Academy and beyond. Marcus had become something of a legend, though not always in a positive way. Cadet Zilthus raised a tentacle. Instructor Chen, your species seems naturally suited for combat. How do we adapt these techniques when our evolution was different? It was a fair question. The Zilthians were a peaceful aquatic species known for their mathematical abilities. The idea of deliberately causing harm was foreign to their culture. Combat isn't about being naturally violent, Marcus explained. It's about understanding patterns, predicting behavior, and making quick decisions under pressure. These are skills that any intelligent species can develop. He gestured to the simulation display, showing a battle from the Centauri Wars. Your people's mathematical gifts give you advantages in calculating trajectories and predicting enemy movements. The key is learning to apply those abilities in new contexts. In the back row, Thresh and Gorak sat side by side, taking careful notes. The two Korthax had requested transfer to Marcus's class after recovering from their injuries. Their attitude toward the human had changed completely. The thing we didn't understand, Thresh had told him privately, is that strength isn't just about physical power. It's about knowing when and how to use what you have. Marcus had become an unofficial ambassador for human capabilities. Federation Command wanted to understand what they were dealing with, and Marcus was their primary source of information. The key principle of asymmetric warfare, Marcus continued, is that conventional rules don't apply. You can't fight a superior force using their own methods. You have to change the game entirely. He pulled up a new scenario showing a small human colony defending against raiders. This is from Earth's history. 57 colonists held off 300 attackers for 6 days. They didn't win through superior firepower or numbers. How then? Asked Cadet Velm, who had also transferred to the class. They made the enemy fight on human terms instead of their own terms. They used the environment, psychological pressure, and the raiders' own expectations against them. Marcus highlighted the tactical movements on the display. The colonists abandoned their fortified positions and scattered into the wilderness. They forced the raiders to split up and hunt them down individually, turned hunters into prey. Sisk leaned forward with interest. They used stealth tactics against a numerically superior force. Exactly, but not Zephyrian stealth, Marcus clarified. Human stealth, persistence hunting. They tracked individual raiders, learned their patterns, and picked them off one by one over several days. The class spent the next hour analyzing the battle, breaking down decision points, and discussing how different species might adapt the tactics to their own capabilities. Marcus was pleased to see genuine intellectual engagement rather than fearful avoidance. After class, Admiral Creeth appeared in the doorway. "Instructor Chen, a word?" They walked through the academy's corridors, past groups of cadets who gave them a wide berth. Marcus's new reputation had created a bubble of space wherever he went. "How are you adapting to your new role?" the Admiral asked. "Better than expected," Marcus replied honestly. "Teaching forces me to think about human capabilities from an outside perspective. It's educational for everyone involved." "Including yourself?" "Especially myself. I'm learning that what makes humans dangerous isn't our violence. It's our adaptability. We can become whatever the situation requires." They entered Admiral Creeth's office, where a holographic conference was already in progress. Representatives from a dozen Federation worlds appeared around the conference table. "Ah, Instructor Chen," said Ambassador Thexhai from the Diplomatic Corps. "Perfect timing. We were just discussing the Kepler incident." Marcus took the indicated seat, recognizing several faces from previous briefings. The Federation Council had been meeting regularly to discuss the human question since his classroom demonstration. "What happened at Kepler?" Marcus asked. "Pirate raid on a mining colony," Admiral Creeth explained. "The colonists sent a distress signal, but our nearest patrol was 8 hours away. The attack should have been over long before help arrived." "Should have been," Ambassador Thexhai emphasized. "Instead, when our ships arrived, they found the entire pirate fleet disabled and their crews in custody. 43 colonists had captured 200 raiders without suffering a single casualty." Marcus wasn't surprised. Standard human response to existential threat. Coordinate, adapt, and eliminate the danger. "The pirates are claiming human rights violations," another representative added. "They say the colonists used psychological torture and inhumane tactics." "Define inhumane," Marcus said dryly. "The humans apparently learned the raiders' individual names, personal histories, and family situations. Then they used this information to convince the pirates that resistance was futile." Marcus nodded. "Psychological warfare. Humans are very good at getting inside other species' heads. We had to be, to survive alongside creatures that were physically superior. The problem," Admiral Creeth said, "is that this is the 5th such incident in the past month. Human colonies and outposts are consistently exceeding all defensive projections. The mathematics don't work unless we factor in capabilities we didn't know existed." Ambassador Thexhai leaned forward. "The Council needs to understand what we're dealing with. Are humans a threat to Federation stability?" Marcus considered the question carefully. It was the same one that had been asked about his species since first contact. "Humans are a threat to anything that threatens them," he said finally. "We're problem solvers. If the problem is hostile aliens trying to kill us, we'll solve it efficiently and permanently." "But we're not hostile," protested a representative from Altair Prime. "No, you're not. And neither are we, as long as everyone remembers that." Marcus's voice carried an undertone that made several representatives shift uncomfortably. "The Federation has been good to humanity. We've found homes for our colonies, trade opportunities for our merchants, and educational opportunities for our children." He gestured around the room. "But if that ever changes, if humans start to feel unwelcome or threatened, then you'll discover that everything you've seen so far has been us playing nice." The conference room fell silent. The implications hung in the air like a challenge. "Is that a threat, Instructor Chen?" Ambassador Thexhai asked carefully. "It's a fact," Marcus replied. "Humans don't make threats. We make promises. And I promise you that as long as the Federation treats us as partners and equals, you'll never have a more loyal ally." Admiral Creeth ended the conference and turned to Marcus. You realize you just changed the course of interstellar diplomacy? Good, Marcus said. It was time for an honest conversation. Later that evening, Marcus received a priority message from Earth. The Federation Council had officially reclassified humanity from primitive aggressive to strategic partner. Human colonies would receive increased autonomy and self-defense authorization. More importantly, the Galactic Naval Academy was establishing a new program, cross-species tactical integration. Marcus had been selected to head the curriculum development. He stood at his window, looking out at the alien stars that had become home. For the first time since leaving Earth, he felt like he belonged somewhere. The galaxy had finally learned what humans were. Now it was time to learn what they could become when they didn't have to hide what they were. The future was going to be interesting. In his final report to Federation Command, Marcus wrote, "Humans are not the monsters you feared or the pets you expected. We are apex predators who learn to build civilizations instead of just hunting grounds. Give us a problem, and we will solve it. Give us an enemy, and we will defeat it. Give us friends, and we will die for them. The choice of which you become is entirely yours." The report was classified at the highest levels and distributed to every Federation world leader. Marcus Chen had graduated from being humanity's hidden representative to being their official voice, and that voice was saying something the galaxy needed to hear. Humans were not going anywhere, and it was time to decide whether that was a blessing or a curse. For the Federation's sake, Marcus hoped they would choose wisely.